Good morning, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call this governing board member. I'm going to call this governing board member of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District meeting to order. The time is 9 a.m. The date is September 19th. If I could please, I always look and I'm supposed to read something first. I'm sorry. Good morning and welcome to our meeting. The board members are participating in person at our office in Fresno, Bakersfield, and Modesto. We will do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation via Zoom and webcast. Before we begin, here are some important guidelines and general instructions for the meeting. Please silence your communication devices such as your cell phone. During the meeting, all public participants will be placed on mute by the host. Public members will not be able to mute or unmute manually. Audio for members of the public will be unmuted once they are recognized to make public comment. After each agenda item, the chair will announce public comment. The clerk will recognize any public attendees who indicate they wish to speak. Would you please do a roll call?
Good morning. Mr. Couch?
Here.
Ms. Escutia Brayton?
She's lost her voice, so she's.
I see her. Yes, good morning. Ms. Lewis? Here. Mr. McCauley? Mr. Mendez?
Here.
Dr. Pacheco Warner?
Here.
Mr. Pereira? Mr. Preciado?
Here.
Mr. Reyna?
I'm here.
Mr. Rickman?
Here.
Good morning. Mr. Robinson? Dr. Sheriffs? Ms. Shuklian? Ms. Nguyen? Here. Mr. Chiesa?
I am here.
Through the chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. If everyone could please stand, and I will ask Member Nguyen if she would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. On to item 4. It's the consent calendar. And the consent calendar is items number 14 through 20. Do any board members want to pull any items to comment? Seeing none. Any public comment?
Are there any public comments on the consent calendar in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comments in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Any members of the public in Fresno present would like to comment on this? Seeing none and none online.
Second.
A motion and a second.
I'll call for roll. Mr. Couch?
Yes.
Ms. Escutia Brayton? I see your thumbs up. Thank you. Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Preciado?
Yes.
Mr. Reyna?
Yes.
Mr. Rickman?
Yes.
And through the chair, Dr. Sheriffs has joined us. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Nguyen?
Yes.
Mr. Chiesa?
Yes.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Thank you. On to item 5, public comments. Time available to comment on any matter that is not on today's posted agenda within the board's jurisdiction. There is time to speak on action items within the rest of the board. Is there any member or anyone online?
Any members in Bakersfield that would like to comment at this time? Any public comment in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comment in Modesto?
No public comment in Modesto.
Thank you. Any members of the public in Fresno would like to comment? We do have one online. Janet Dietzkame.
Welcome, Janet.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Chiesa, members of the board and staff. Climate change. Wow. I think someone would have to be deaf, dumb, and blind all to not see what is happening worldwide and in our country. East Coast, rain, 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 flooding, flooding. West Coast, heat, 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 fires. Insurance companies must feel tremendously stressed. When my husband and I moved here in 2003, the weather was very different. Climate change was affecting, but it wasn't affecting on the level we're experiencing this summer. We used to have in November night temperatures that could be in the high 20s. We used to pick our lemons early so they wouldn't be ruined or adversely affected. Now, we just pick our lemons as people want them because the night temperatures never go down that low anymore. Summer temperatures are outrageous, especially this year. Outrageous. Thanks to us, thanks to not moving fast enough to address climate change. It's horrific. It is sad. People migrating, people losing homes, people losing lives. It's horrible. I started reading about climate change in the 1960s. The models there could not predict the population growth, the volume of vehicles that we are experiencing now. They couldn't predict. And they put where we are now as up into the 2050s. Climate change. Wow. Needs action. Needs care. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Janet.
There's no further online comments.
We'll close the public comment period. Move on to item 6. It is a report on District Citizens Advisory Committee, and unfortunately, Manuel Cunha is back in DC doing the Lord's work for us, trying to help out the Valley. So it is included in your packet. His report, the Citizens Advisory Committee, is included in the packet. Anyone would like to comment? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 7. Accept $14 million in additional state funding to support the district's vehicle replacement program and approve reallocation of SERP incentive funding within South Central Fresno. How are you?
Hi,
Good morning.
I'm good. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Brian Dodds. I'm a grant program manager here at the district, and it's a pleasure to be here with you this morning to talk about our vehicle replacement program. As your board is well aware, reducing mobile source emissions is a key strategy to meet federal air quality standards, and the district has no regulatory authority over these sources. The district's voluntary incentive programs play a key role in reducing mobile source emissions in order to reach our air quality attainment goals. The Valley's low income and priority population residents are most impacted by older vehicles with higher emissions and fuel costs. The district's Drive Clean in the San Joaquin program provides Valley residents with incentive options for reducing emissions from passenger vehicles with a focus on low income and disadvantaged communities throughout the Valley. In 2014, the district's groundbreaking vehicle replacement component was approved by your board. This pilot program served as a model for what has become the state's Clean Cars for All program and continues to be a leader in program implementation throughout the state. Since 2015, the district has received over $92 million in state funding to operate our vehicle replacement program. Through this program, incentives are available up to $12,000 to Valley residents and depend on the income level of the participant, whether or not they live in a disadvantaged community, and the type of vehicle replacement vehicle that is being purchased. To date, we have replaced over 6,700 high polluting vehicles with cleaner and more fuel efficient models, with the new vehicles primarily being electric or plug-in hybrids. Outreach for the vehicle replacement program utilizes a grassroots community-driven approach to reaching low-income and disadvantaged community residents throughout the Valley. We hold weeknight community events, which are held at local businesses or public spaces and are a great opportunity to engage community members about the program. These weeknight community events have been held throughout the Valley. Since relaunching the program last October, there have been over 100 weeknight events which have connected residents in small and large communities with the program. These events have proven to be extremely effective in engaging with residents who otherwise may not have participated in these types of programs. In addition, we have utilized partnerships with community-based organizations to communicate program information through existing networks and social media to conduct localized outreach to connect with residents. This approach to program outreach has resulted in very high levels of participation throughout the Valley's disadvantaged communities, with more than 98% of the Valley's disadvantaged communities having participated in the vehicle replacement program. The results of the outreach strategy have proven to be very effective in reaching underserved communities and assisting in the transition to cleaner transportation options. A UCLA Luskin Center report highlights the district's ability to reach residents in underserved communities, stating that efforts of the district appear largely focused on reaching low-income communities and communities of color through a variety of outreach approaches while still attaining emission reductions. Over the last year, the district has seen a very high level of demand for program funds, and currently there are more applications in queue than available funding. Based on the current demand, CARB has allocated an additional $14 million in program funds to the district. This will provide approximately $11.2 million in vehicle replacement project funds and about $2.8 million in program administration costs. This $14 million allocation represents the full amount that CARB had previously held in reserve to meet program needs across the state. With this additional funding, the district can support approximately 1,000 additional vehicle replacement projects. And our program partner, Valley Clean Air Now, will be responsible for a number of tasks, including program management and oversight, outreach, assisting applicants throughout the process, coordinating vehicle purchases, and reporting program information back to the district. And this is just a sample of a few of our very happy participants at the end with their new vehicles. It's always great to see and connect with the folks who are benefiting from these programs. In addition to the program funding that's available to residents throughout the Valley, each of the AB 617 communities within the district have incorporated a vehicle replacement component within their approved community emission reduction program, or SERP. And throughout SERP implementation, there are ongoing opportunities to adjust funding amounts to meet program demands and community priorities. And changes within individual SERP measures do not impact the overall funding amount within the SERP. Since the SERP was approved, the district and South Central Fresno Community Steering Committee have worked closely to identify and support changing funding allocations as needed. And today's recommendation was discussed and supported by a majority of the steering committee members during their August meeting. So in the originally approved SERP, it included $1.6 million to support the replacement of high polluting passenger vehicles for residents in the South Central Fresno AB 617 community. And it also included $8 million to assist public agencies with the purchase of plug-in hybrid or battery electric vehicles for their fleets. Currently, the passenger vehicle measure is seeing very high demand, and the funding originally allocated through the SERP is nearly exhausted, while there remains sufficient funding under the public fleets option. The passenger vehicle SERP measure provides up to $20,000 for eligible low-income households residing in AB 617 community to purchase new or used plug-in or fully electric vehicles. And based on the discussions that we've had with the steering committee, we were proposing to shift $3 million in funding from the public fleets option to the passenger vehicle replacement measure to support additional vehicle replacement projects within the community, while also ensuring there's available funding for the public fleets measure to meet expected program demand. And with that, the recommendations are here on the slide before you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Ryan, does the demand outstrip the $3 million, or you believe that's going to meet the demand That's a tough question, but
A tough question. It's a good, really good question. I think we're constantly monitoring participation. We think that $3 million will support a healthy amount of replacement projects. Should there be a need for additional funding, that would be something that we would discuss with the community at a later time and bring back to your board as necessary.
Member Nguyen?
The 14 million you talked about, you don't have enough. Do you have a wait list right now for replacement or for funding?
Yeah, through the chair, and that's another really good question.
Mhm.
Currently, we have about $10 million in pending project applications and about 5 million in remaining funds that we've previously received.
Okay.
So right now we have about $5 million that's oversubscribed.
Okay.
This 14 million total, but 11 million in project funds would support a portion of those, plus additional applications that we can receive over the coming months.
Okay, and are those allocated first come, first serve?
Generally a first come, first serve basis based on when they're completed. The Valley Can team helps folks submit and, turn in the necessary paperwork for those applications.
Right, thank you. Sure.
Thank you. Dr. Sheriffs?
Thank you. This has been observed many times before. What an amazing program. Nimble, focused, able to adjust to the word. We understand the comment, the questions. The comment, a reminder, these are climate investment dollars. Money, I believe, comes from cap and trade. And this is cap and trade. This is putting a market price on carbon. And that money is coming back to our community to do these incredible projects, having an impact on carbon emissions, as well as helping us do our primary job, which is cleaning the air, achieving the standards. A great example of the success we experience is the challenge of climate change. Using these climate dollars supporting the co-benefits. Climate pollutants. My question involves reallocation from public measure and I guess I'm gonna do that. The power of branding. It's so great seeing a school bus go by. Just a little plug for the air district. Many vehicles. We don't act people participating in canned booster on that car. Where the funding came from. It'd be nice if we could do something like that. And certainly when we do a public fleet that's happening.
Apologies, I think your microphone might be having some issues. So I just asked Council Member Mayor Bracciotto to turn his on
So I get
just
to
to try to
start
pick
again?
up. I think it's there, but it's maybe a little bit faint.
I can do it again.
Just ask the damn question.
No, I think we got you though. Yeah, if you wanted to,
So-
sorry to interrupt you, but
Nope. I'll speak louder next time. I'm hard of hearing.
Thank you. Vice Chair Lewis?
Yes, thank you.
Wait, I had a question.
We shouldn't have wasted so damn much time pontificating and ask your damn question.
Through the chair, I think I understood your question to be, can we ask the public fleets to put a district logo on their vehicles? And I think it's something that we can provide to them and see if that's something that we can certainly add to the program requirements.
Also, wondering about the decision. Has there not been as much interest in the clean fleets or?
There's been about $1 million in interest from the agencies within the community to participate. We're reaching back out to them to see if they can do additional projects. It sounds like there could be some more demand coming in that particular program. So we're constantly outreaching to the city, the county, the school districts that operate within the 617 community to see if there's room for additional projects to be done.
Vice Chair Lewis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For our San Joaquin Valley region and vehicle replacement monies that are granted to residents who apply for them, are there cities or areas within the valley that are not taking advantage of this as much as others? And do you know what those areas might be?
We've seen really good participation throughout the valley on this program, and I think it helps that our outreach approach is designed to get into smaller communities and larger communities, and we are constantly like crisscrossing the valley. So it's been fairly even in terms of participation, as you kind of expect based on population. And the areas that haven't participated are areas where there's very, very low population, or we've looked at census tracts that don't have participation, and it's a couple of them are like prisons and things like that. But generally speaking, across the valley, there's been fairly equitable participation, and we can certainly look into that a little bit more, but we're constantly seeing fairly consistent numbers of participants at weeknight events, whether it's in a smaller town or a larger city. It's generally between 80 and about 100 people that come out per night to turn in their applications.
And with the monies that we've received and the applicants in waiting to receive grants to purchase vehicles, if new applicants apply now, then they will go on to a waiting list, I would assume.
They would, yes, they would be behind the people that have already applied.
Okay.
So, the applications in queue will use the existing money that we have. When we're all out of that, and if we're waiting for additional funds at that point, then those people that apply later would be next.
I just want to be clear about that point, that, when you apply today, that the program is open, right? So definitions are important. You don't go onto the program today and get on a waiting list. We're constantly processing applications. You will always have, an application list. By accepting today's money, we definitely have enough funding to handle the current demand in the program, but we always have to keep an eye on the program to make sure, that we at some point, if we don't keep adding money to the program, it can close, just like any program that runs out of funding. So we're continuing to advocate. I think that, this is a gold standard program. There's a reason why the state gave us all the remaining state funds. We're not the only program in the state. There are numerous other programs across the state, and we're the only one actually that was able to show the demand and the success that was able to result in being able to take today's recommendation to you, which a lot of credit goes to this board for continuing to modify the program, make it accessible. We're constantly lauded for our ability to get into all of our communities, to answer your earlier question. And a lot of credit goes to, we really appreciate CARB, for working closely with us, and Dr. Pacheco-Warner being on their board, constantly advocating for getting more money into the program. We submitted another application recently to EPA to bring even more funding into the program. So very competitive, but if hopefully we're able to secure that funding, we can come back to the board again with you. So we're constantly looking for ways to satisfy demand, and there is no waiting list today. It's an open program. Luckily, we have this funding. It's going to stay open for as long as we can keep funding it.
Well, when I said waiting list, with this money coming in, this will help fund the people who are in the queue to get grants. The money that we received from CARB, was that, and you said it was all the money that they had, was that for the fiscal year 24, 25?
I believe it might have been from 23, 24 and finally getting to us. But it's the last of the remaining funding with CARB because of the state budget situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm only asking because I would still like to encourage people in our county and in my community to submit their applications, and hopefully there'll be additional funds coming down from the federal government. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Mendez?
Yeah, on the public fleet, public fleets being here for a long time and being on the other side of this too, there's a lot more sophistication there. So over the years, they've always been right on in getting stuff in and getting stuff turned over. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah, And that's kind of why they've got their kind of house in order already and have used, funds from previous years. And now they're, pretty much taken care of up to there has to be some major incompetence on a public fleet for not getting it taken care of because these programs have been around a long time.
That's correct.
Yeah.
One thing I would add too is that public agencies are adept at combining different sources of funds as well.
Right.
And so there's often situations where a school district, may have already worked with us, even directly with us, using another program, to say replace a bus. And so that it frees up opportunity for other
Right.
programs. So the city of Fresno and Fresno County are both part of the steering committee. And this is something that we're working very closely with them on, continuing to work with them on looking for projects. And, we have a strong, relationship in being able to do that. So they have moved forward. We'll continue to move forward. There's an opportunity here, based on just the timing of the funding and sort of the over allocation for now in that program, the opportunity in this other program. There's not to say that we're not continuing to work with them to find
Right.
funding to continue
This
moving
is
forward.
just a
Yeah.
little deeper dive into why that money was available. But,
Yeah.
you're always way too kind and complimenting the board when it's staff's nimbleness and staff's hard work that continues to make this program shine.
Very nice comment. Member Preciado?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question that I have is regarding infrastructure, and it goes together with the electric cars. Is there any data, or could you give us an update how small rural communities are doing with infrastructure charging stations? Because it probably goes together. So maybe when you have like an event in a community, maybe talk about infrastructure funding or see how the community is doing, how many charging stations they have, because I think that also will help our communities kind of find out about funding that is available for charging stations. Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair, another great question. And our Charge Up program provides charging infrastructure, and it's available. We see a lot of participation in that program right now. You can get funding for level 2 or level 3 chargers. We've worked with communities throughout the valley, including a number on the west side. But that charging infrastructure is definitely trying to keep up with the vehicle demand that's out there. We can assist with cities, counties, businesses, school districts, installing that charging infrastructure within their businesses or their, office buildings. But certainly the charging infrastructure is something to keep a close eye on. And we also have funding opportunities for heavy duty charging infrastructure throughout the valley as well, which we're seeing a large uptick on.
There's also funding available, one last piece on that, for residents to also install charging, at their homes, right? And depending on the use of the vehicle, very often, that's actually sufficient for the whether it's commute type, activity. So there's like the public charging, which I think you're referring to, but also just simply having, the ability to just charge your vehicle at home, maybe a little bit faster with like a level 2 charger. And there's different resources available for that as well. That this program is really great actually at trying to, sort of cobble together different pieces of it to make sure that there isn't enough infrastructure out there. But it's definitely, an ongoing, it's a good point and an ongoing priority of how do we keep, building that out.
Very much. Seeing no other comments, we'll go out to the public.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on this item in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comments in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. We do have one online comment, Bianca Lopez.
Morning, Bianca.
Hey, good morning. My name is Bianca Lopez. I'm co-founder of Valley Improvement Projects for Social and Environmental Justice here in Stanislaus County. And I wanted to just thank the staff for doing a great job at the community outreach. We found as we are part of the Central California Asthma Collaborative's Clean Vehicle Empowerment Collaborative, We noticed that working in disadvantaged communities, you have to sit down with people to fill out the application. And so I really was happy to see the high turnout that the staff were having at these pizza parlors, pizza places where lots of people were coming to get help with actually filling out the application, which is really great. And I'd love to see that continue. And I wanted to clarify, the presentation today was only about the SERP community in the Southern Valley, or is this a general report? Will this funding that is being requested going to come to the whole Central Valley, or is this just for the SERP community?
Happy to answer that question to the chair. There's two components. The $14 million that we're recommending that we accept is for the Valley-wide program. That will be available to everyone. There's $3 million within the South Central Fresno SERP that we're asking to be moved from public fleets into the passenger vehicle component for the AB 617 community. So two separate recommendations there, one Valley-wide and one within the community.
Thank you. And then I was wondering if you would have or who to follow up with about actual numbers of people who are applying and how many are actually getting into a clean vehicle by county. And then how are you ensuring, I know that you're going to the disadvantaged communities to host these events, but is there data to prove that? And then wondering what is your expected wait time for community members who apply? And are there any is there any educational workshops about charging and how to use the apps to get, from home to the next charging station? What other type of community education are you doing to ensure that those who are buying a plug-in vehicle know how to access resources to make sure that they can charge equitably?
So Chair, we're happy to circle with Bianca to have that conversation and also talk about some of the great ideas that are, sounds like there's a combination of questions and ideas there that we're happy to have the staff work with her on. So appreciate the comments.
Thank you, Bianca, for your questions, and they will get in contact with you.
Sure. And then who would that person be?
Bianca, I'll follow up with you directly. This is Brian.
Brian, thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
DODDS Dodds. Brian Dodds.
No further online comments.
Okay. As I come back to the board, I see Member Rickman. Put his hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. Hey, real quick, I know there was talk about infrastructure. I know in 2021, there was a bipartisan infrastructure bill signed into law, 7.5 billion. And I know there was an article in March that said there was only seven stations built since then. So where are we at? Do we know? When you talk about infrastructure, we talk about state, but the Fed's supposed to have a hand in this also. So where are we at with that?
That's a very good question, a very comprehensive question too, that we're happy to come back to you on. There's different levels of infrastructure, obviously under bill with the bipartisan infrastructure law. There's electric vehicle charging. There's a number of other categories of infrastructure that are covered by that, including even transportation type projects. So I think we can give you a bit more information. We have reported in the past on things that we've been involved with. We've actually received some funding for heavy duty charging infrastructure under some of the programs under bill. But if what you're asking is a full accounting of the Valley-wide benefits that may have come from bill, that's a pretty comprehensive question that we'll have to come back to you with more information on.
All right. Thank you, Samir. Thank you, Chairman.
You bet. Member Rania.
Thank you, Chair. As it refers to charging infrastructure, I know that funding has been available and is available to perhaps build or install new chargers. But there is an issue that some of those chargers become unusable because people steal the cables that are attached to them? And possibly, is there any way that we can allocate some funding to making those charging stations available to the public again by having a replacement funding for cables?
That's a great question. Definitely share your observation. And there's been some media on this topic as well. When folks kind of see this happening out there, some critique of the network for that reason. I know there's been some efforts recently on a couple of fronts related to that. One of them is to actually build the chargers in a way that helps minimize the ability to for that to happen. So I think some of the newer charging installations are doing things that are just a little bit more secure and try to minimize it up front. But there's also the situation where that where it's still happening, and I believe that there's been efforts to actually come up with funding that would help deal with that issue. We have not allocated our own funding towards addressing that, but it's certainly something that as we think about building out the network in our priority or in our policy priorities. We'll be talking about those in January as part of our legislative and policy platform. We can certainly, as part of like that broader effort to have a viable network in the Valley, keep an eye on that particular issue and see if there's ways that we can address that. And there's other policy related to it as well in terms of the how it's treated as far as under the judicial system and what sort of crime it is and that. So there's a lot of elements to it. I know there's a lot of conversation around it, and we're happy to stay engaged on that and see if there's any useful role that we may be able to play in helping deal with that.
Thank you. And another issue related to that is that as people use applications to find out where possible chargers may be or where they are located, is that these applications are unable to tell whether the station is usable or not. And so somebody that is traveling and might, take a chance and say, well, I can get there. And then when they get there, they're unable to use the charger. It just becomes a problem. So maybe there is something that can be done to also inform the public that uses this charging stations about whether a station is actually up or it is not available to the public.
We all just I got that apprehensive feeling of, what do they call it? Range anxiety. That gives you range anxiety. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. So
thank you.
Please look into that. Right, Member Mendez.
Yeah, I want to make a motion to approve.
And we have a second. So did you want to comment?
Nope.
Oh,
That's what I wanted to do.
okay, make a motion in a second. We have a motion. Please call the roll.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Couch,
Yes.
Ms. Escutia Brayton. I see your thumbs up. Thank you. Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Preciado?
Yes.
Mr. Reyna?
Yes.
Mr. Rickman?
Yes.
Dr. Sheriffs? Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Nguyen?
Yes.
Mr. Chiesa?
Yes.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Brian. We're moving on to item 8, which should be the most important thing considering budget constraints and everything else and how we're doing. And it was nice to get $14 million, but this is the verbal report on state and federal funding advocacy efforts.
And, we just had a number of questions and conversations around funding. The funding advocacy continues as per tradition, very, very aggressively to bring resources to the Valley. So I just want to introduce Tom Jordan, Director of Policy and Government Affairs, to give us an update on how those efforts are going.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As you're all aware, the district has a long history of implementing air quality strategies and plans to bring the Valley clean air and improve public health. Those efforts over the years have resulted in over a 90% reduction in nitrogen oxide emissions from stationary sources, which is the district's primary regulatory area. Additionally, we've been able to bring over $6.5 billion in public-private investment through voluntary incentive programs to get reductions primarily from sources that we don't have the authority to regulate, which is the mobile source category. Mobile sources are the majority of the remaining emissions here in the valley. For NOx emissions, it's over 80%. And the state and federal government are the only entities that have the authority to regulate those sources. If we're going to continue to make progress, air quality standards keep getting more stringent, and we keep looking for ways to move forward. We need help from the state and federal government, both on the policy side, but also on the resource side, to keep getting reductions from that largest category of mobile sources. So at the beginning of each year, your board adopts a legislative platform that directs us in our advocacy efforts. And a huge part of that is actually on the resource side to keep those incentive programs moving forward, and to keep those reductions coming here in the San Joaquin Valley. When you adopt that platform, we go to work with a variety of efforts to educate policymakers at both the state and federal level about our challenges here in the Valley, about our demographics here in the Valley. We oftentimes work with our board members, participate in those efforts. We work with our stakeholders to share that message. And one of the big things we point out is we think priority should be given to areas with the most significant challenge, like the San Joaquin Valley. We're an extreme non-attainment area for ozone, serious non-attainment area for particulate matter, and we're also an area with a significant percentage of our population that's in disadvantaged communities. So we continue to share that message in every way we can. At the federal level, as far as resources go, we advocate heavily through EPA and the budget process. There's an annual program called the Diesel Emission Reductions Act, which we continue to help push those funds upward. We compete very well. You just heard one of our programs, but our grant programs are generally held in high regard everywhere, and that helps us compete for those funds, and we do very well in that. And there's also, it's called the Targeted Airshed Program, that is similar to DEER, but it takes into account your air quality challenges. And we actually helped create that program. It started as an earmark, and we actually built it up into a program. Oftentimes our projects are the top scoring in the country in competing with those funds. And then also through EPA, we received some grants to help us do our air quality planning, do monitoring and all of that. And we push for increases in those funds as well through the EPA budget and the budget process. While the federal budget isn't experiencing the current situation, the state budget is. Those of you that follow the federal budget process, it's quite a roller coaster these days. But in general, we've seen those programs tick up over time, and so we've done pretty well through that process. There was just some discussion of the bipartisan infrastructure law. There's also the Inflation Reduction Act. Both of those programs provided substantial money for climate-oriented programs and other programs, and we've been working to look across the federal government for opportunities to apply, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute, along with the annual budget bill. Also, we've been successful at getting funding placed in the Farm Bill to help us reduce emissions from the ag industry. That includes funding for replacing tractors, working with our ag industry. It's been a hugely successful program. That federal funding combined with state and local fundings replaced over 12,000 tractors here in the San Joaquin Valley in cooperation with the ag industry, not through a regulatory system, and hugely successful. Congress is currently in the discussion of a new farm bill, and we continue to share our recommendations there for both the tractor program, also for things like low dust nut harvesters, alternatives to ag burning, and those types of things in the farm bill. At the state level, we've been hugely successful over the years in advocating for clean air funding and kind of punching above our weight as a population here in the San Joaquin Valley. Up there quite often, meeting with folks. Despite the fact that we have a really tough budget situation, we've still been successful in the last year in getting some funding. However, I will say that that's going to be an ongoing effort. The state budget situation does not look to be improving anytime soon, and we'll continue with those efforts. Just wanted to give a quick rundown of some of the things in our current budget that are funded with these efforts. The farmer program, I mentioned the federal piece of replacing ag equipment. Our last year's budget had 118 million for the farmer program. It was tough this year to get continued funding. I'll talk about that in a moment, but you know, every discussion about farmer in the state has been extremely positive. However, we're competing with a shrinking pot of resources, so that's challenging. The AB 617 program, we had 61 million in funding for emission reductions in our disadvantaged communities under AB 617. We were able to compete for and be awarded 56 million in federal funding for heavy duty electric charging through the Federal Highway Administration. Huge success. We have some more efforts in that area. Annually, we receive funds for the Carl Moyer program, which is kind of the granddaddy of all incentive programs, funds vehicle replacements across the board. We mentioned the Clean Cars for All program, $30 million for that. We just competed for and got that other 14 million, which was a huge success and a recognition of the success of our programs. Received $9 million for low dust nut harvesters from the federal government. Some funding for wood burning device replacement in homes. And then also, because we are so successful in the Carl Moyer program, there was some reserve money that had been in place from a few years ago. And that total amount was also allocated to us as a kind of an addition to our normal allocation. And then money for research and technology advancement as well. We have a number of active grant applications at the federal level. We were just back with the delegation in DC, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about that, maybe along with a couple of our board members. Mayor Preciado and Councilmember Scutia Brayton were there as well. And we met with a number of federal agencies, our legislative delegation, to get support for these applications. I mentioned the 56 million that funded a electric vehicle charging facility in Taft and up in Gustine. We have 2 additional applications. I apologize, there is an error on this. The first project is actually only in Tracy, or the original discussion also included Buttonwillow, but that project wasn't quite ready, so it was not included in the final application. I apologize for that being on the slide. So there's 1 facility in Tracy, and then 2 additional facilities in the other application in Kettleman City in Kings County, and then nearby Celia on the 99 corridor. One of the things we've been continuously letting people know is the importance of the San Joaquin Valley to a West Coast electric goods movement network. We're right in the middle of the state of California. 99 and I-5 is the main corridor. We've done 2 facilities already. There's 1 facility open in Kern County, a couple more on the way, and then we're trying to work up the valley and build out that network as well. We also have an application with EPA, so that those two applications are with the Federal Highway Administration. We have an application with EPA to replace heavy-duty vehicles, both on-road and off-road. And then we actually worked with a number of the short-haul rail operators in the San Joaquin Valley to also apply through the Federal Rail Administration for funding to replace 15 older high-polluting locomotives with cleaner locomotives. And again, since these are short-haul operators, these would stay in the valley and would be a huge benefit if that is funded. We also have 2 applications with NRCS through USDA, the National Resource Conservation Service. One of those is to bump up the funding for tractor replacement. And then we have another application through them for alternatives to ag burning. Those are for 25 million apiece. We have a application through US EPA for climate smart, a disadvantaged community type program with partners in those communities to do home electrification and other things in some of our disadvantaged communities. Brian Dodge just talked about our Clean Cars for All program. We've also applied for a climate justice community change grant program to expand that program in our disadvantaged communities in the Valley. And then through DERA, I mentioned earlier, That's one of the programs that's kind of an annual allocation. We have a $9 million grant for additional tractor replacement here in the Valley. At the state level, I mentioned that even in a tough budget environment, we've been successful with air quality funding. One of the things that was placed in this year's budget is AB 617 program. One of the things air districts have been advocating for is reliable funding. We've been basically competing every year for that funding, and they they have a 5-year funding commitment at $250 million, which is roughly the level it's been at moving forward. Now, the state budget, having a funding commitment is a good thing, but you still have to reaffirm that commitment every year. So that'll be an ongoing challenge, and we compete very well for this funding. So this funding does both the implementation side for our staffing and the incentive side for actual projects. Brian Dodge just spoke to you about the 14 million. Again, it's a huge success. It's a recognition that our program really is the gold standard, that all of that available funding was given to the Valley. LA, the Bay Area, San Diego, Sacramento all have programs, and then there's a statewide program as well, and that money all came to us. Carl Moyer program, it's one of those foundational programs that continues annually. We continue to see strong funding in that. And then I mentioned the farmer program. We pushed throughout the session it actually was funded at zero. We worked with our ag industry and others. We were able to get $2 million, which isn't what the need is, but we thought it was important that it was recognized and still funded. And that funding came in kind of at the very end of the session. So while it won't meet the demand, we wanted to make sure that line item was still in the budget so we can keep fighting for it in future years. And with that.
And I just wanted to acknowledge again, the board is very, very forward looking on this front. We adopt a very aggressive public health centered policy platform every year that, the staff then working closely with board members, again, Councilmember Scooty Brayton and Mayor Preciado, along actually with a number of other elected officials from throughout the Valley as part of the Regional Policy Council. We're advocating, full force last week on the need for these funds to come to the region to help our residents, our farmers, our businesses, and all of us, get to our clean air goals. I just wanted to extend a lot of appreciation for the board as a whole, for the 2 board members here that were able to spend time in DC last week, and the ongoing priority that we place on trying to seek these funds and move forward with these effective programs. And of course, Tom, his leadership and the team there in his department of a relatively small department who works really hard to try to push for these various priorities.
So I guess this is the big picture, because no one with a straight face can say that we don't deserve the first dollar, right? They always talk about impacted region, disadvantaged areas. Are there any areas where we believe we need to concentrate because someone was more successful and probably wasn't as deserving? Because again, I come back to, it's very well received. And when you're lobbying, generally you just look at the statistics, and the first dollar should be spent in the San Joaquin Valley on just about every program without fail.
Yeah, no, I do believe that the Valley has the most compelling story, and the board, we talk about this every year on every front, the air quality challenge, and not only on the challenge and the fact that we have amongst the most disadvantaged communities anywhere in the country, but also opportunity. We have different sectors here who have been stepping up and are continuing to look for resources to help and continue to basically lead the nation in doing different things to help with air quality, with climate, and various related priorities. And so that story and telling that story is critical for us to be able to compete in an even more competitive environment than ever. There's a lot of these programs, they're not only non-attainment focused. A big example of that was a CPRG program that EPA conducted nationally. It was a $4.5 billion program. I think they received over $30 billion worth of projects. And we in that particular case, unfortunately, did not receive the funding that we were looking for, although there's still conversations going on with that. But we do have $209 million worth of projects that are with different federal agencies today. And so that's why it's so important for us to continue pushing for the public health priority as the federal government, who also, by the way, sets the standards that we're all expected to meet here in the San Joaquin Valley and other parts of the country, to then also turn around and provide the resources that are necessary to be able to do the innovative things that we need to do. So I think your point is spot on. You know, we got a very close, we're keeping a very close eye on exactly how these different funds that relate to the work that we do here are being spent, and actually have people like Short Haul Rail and others that are willing to do some really cost-effective projects if given the proper resources to be able to do them.
On Regional Policy Council, when you were just back there with the two members, you just about every item that you talk about revolves around air quality. I mean, it's one of the core principles. So that's another reason it's so well received. I want to go back. One program you said we weren't successful on, there was a lot of money available. Is that because the rules were written to advantage someone else, or is it just that they don't want all the money to come to the Valley? I mean, like, in your opinion?
Yeah, and I think my opinion on this, and of course, this is still an ongoing conversation, with the federal government. But my opinion on this is that there's programs and criteria, and then there's ultimately what's decided at the end. When you have, in that case, almost a tenfold level of demand, versus available funding, and when a state like Connecticut gets $600 million, and the state of California as a whole got about $500 million, there's, I think, very serious questions that need to be asked about, what, how effective is that program at actually getting to, to where the opportunities are. So we were very clear last week about what at least questions we have about that, but also, what can be done to make sure that, when you have different sectors that are ready to go on these types of projects, how do we actually get that investment that we need? So that, unfortunately, that we don't win every single application that we submit, but we have a good track record of winning, most. So
Yeah.
we'll see here with these projects that we have in front of us. By the way, several of these projects are definitely very closely related to, that same application. So, I think we are, if we're able to get some of the USDA funding, for example, and other funds, we'll still be able to move forward with the same initiatives. It's just all in, and I really appreciate, again, the entire Valley really getting behind, as you mentioned, the air quality priority, because we certainly have a lot of opportunity here in the region.
Thank you. Member Rickman.
Thank you, Chairman. And I agree with our chairman. The first dollar should be going to the Valley. Do we have an estimate, for example, when we're doing some of these grants and so on, how much pollution come from other areas? And I don't want to keep beating a dead horse here, because I've said it over and over again, but we're under, we have one of the strictest standards in the nation, and yet you just go west here a couple miles in the Bay Area and they don't. And for example, with ag burns, we have ag burns, you go to the Bay Area and they don't. So we get their pollution. So when we talk about advocacy, and you guys do a heck of a job on funding, which is great, so thank you all for what you do. But on the other side of advocacy, the goalpost keeps moving every year, either with, CARB or EPA, and it seems like there's a status quo in these other areas like the Bay Area. Or is there any type of advocacy for them to come up to some different standards so we can stop getting their pollutions over here in the Valley?
Thank you for that question. So yeah, we do definitely receive transport from the Bay Area. And over the years, we've had a variety of efforts to try to address that. We also in turn transport to the upper desert. So there's a combination there. One of the things we did early on was when Smog Check 2 came about, it was only required in the large urban areas with the worst air pollution. Here in the San Joaquin Valley, there was an option in that bill to expand it beyond those urban areas, and we expanded it to about 95% of the Valley population. That Bay Area was not required to do Smog Check 2 because of their air quality situation. And we were able to kind of almost embarrass them into putting it in their area. And so they actually did in the end add that requirement, which we already had here in the Valley. And we also use that argument when resources are available in Sacramento to basically say the areas with the worst challenge should get the funding. And oftentimes, while they have more population than us, we actually receive a larger percentage of the funding based upon those arguments. And so they, politically, we have to be careful because there's a lot of political power in Sacramento from the Bay Area, but where we can, we've used that argument to bring more resources to us to address some of that transport as well.
I'll just add two quick things to that. That I think at times we've been able to find opportunities for actually working together to see what we could do to reduce, some of the mobile source emissions on the 580 corridor, whether it's rail or other types of projects related to freight. That's something I think we certainly can keep looking at. I think the last part, which might be more direct response to your question, Supervisor, on more of like, how do we continue recognizing that impact and what are we really, what are we going to do with it sort of moving forward? We have a new PM standard, we have other standards, and we are taking a look at that now. Again, I think that's just wanted to let you know that as we do the new modeling, we're doing, we're kind of reinvigorating or reevaluating really everything, in the context of the new PM 2.5 standard, working with CARB and just doing research as well and looking at just opportunities for just making sure that we understand, where different things are coming from. That is going to be something that we'll be taking a look at again. I suspect we'll be having more conversations in the future about just making sure we understand, okay, where actually is those levels. But the northern part is definitely impacted the most, central less, and then that when you get to the south, that's where the least impact is. That's what the science has basically shown up until today.
All right, thank you both, and thank you, Chairman, for the time.
You're very, very welcome. I want to say Dr. PW. Can I say that one time?
Yeah.
Dr. P, is that yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So looking ahead to next year, and particularly thinking about our legislative platform, how are you thinking about some of the money that's sort of already in the pipeline to be dispersed, but there's a lot of opportunity for partnership, private partnership, but also, as they're thinking about dispersing this money, there's obviously like a lot of community engagement piece, and certainly the district is is a stakeholder as well as the community. Like how are you thinking about it? Because I know that budgets are going to be constrained and all of that, but there's also like a lot of money that's coming in and potentially coming into the Valley. And so I'm wondering how you're thinking about that advocacy about, continuing to draw down money, even if it's not in grant form, but directly, but like in the implementation phases.
I think we can probably tag team it. I'll share some thoughts, and Tom, if you have any additional thoughts, feel free to jump in as well. And through the chair, just a quick response to that. So part of the goal of our trip to DC last week was also having exploratory discussions with different agencies, different federal agencies about some of those funds that you may be referring to. There are some funds that are programmed. There are some funds that actually have large awards made where there may be opportunity within those awards to benefit the San Joaquin Valley. So there some of the big things that came out of some of those conversations were we met, for example, with the Department of Energy, who's got a suite of programs that are everything from technology development to also technology deployment. And so there's a number of leads that we're following up on with them on how do we build all of those types of funds require collaboration with many different partners, including educational institutions. So we're looking at trying to bridge, some of those connections, so we can try to come up with even more projects. Bioenergy came up as another area that there's certainly a lot of interest in the state in looking at, what's the next generation of bioenergy with all the different organics feedstocks that are in the state. What do we do with that, and not necessarily just treat it as a waste, but does it actually provide some sort of climate friendly, air friendly, useful sort of a purpose? So that's another area that came up. There's actually a large scale class 1 rail project that we're looking at right now to do even more work with locomotives and other kind of related rail activity. And so we're trying to cobble together potentially some funding for that as well. So there certainly is, I mean, to your point, larger point, which is, you know, how do we continue staying strategic in our priorities so that we can bring even more projects to the federal government, even within existing funding appropriations and maybe projects that have been awarded. Another one that you'll be hearing about a little bit later in our draft agenda for the study session in November is the Arches Hydrogen Project, which is a $1.2 billion award that came to the state of California to basically develop a hydrogen market to lower the costs of the production of hydrogen. We're engaging with them. We're actually going to be bringing them to the board meeting to have a conversation about how the Valley can actually benefit from that whole effort. So there's quite a bit. I just touched on a number of different pieces. I don't know, Tom, if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And, traditionally, the way we've grown to the size we have in our incentive program is through partnership. But I think the types of partners is ever expanding. And I think you've seen that with some of the EPA grants with environmental justice communities and looking to expand that beyond AB 617. Samir mentioned the rail pieces. I think another, as we look forward, he mentioned the educational institutions. I think it's time for some basic research. So I think we're going to be looking a little bit harder at research and technology advancement dollars also as we move forward. And that's going to involve partnerships with others that may have some knowledge that we don't in different categories. So I think that'll be a big priority.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Member Mendez?
Yeah, I just want to point out something. You're very humble, but when we've went back there in the past, and it's just not only talking about, going after dollars, but, looking at the big picture on regulation that I think the rest of the board really knows that when you speak back there, and when Syed was here, when he would speak and any of the staff spoke, you guys were head and shoulders above everybody in the United States. I mean, even when we testified in front of Congress, I mean, it was in that committee hearing, it was pretty obvious that Syed was the smartest guy in the room. There was no doubt about it. But I think it's that really helps us a lot when the team that you put together goes back there along with the electeds to advocate. We just have tremendous speakers there from staff, and our board needs to know that.
Thank you for those comments. Very nice. Okay, seeing no more board comments, go to the public.
Are there any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comments in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none, we do have one online comment. Bianca Lopez.
Welcome back, Bianca.
Thank you. I appreciate learning more about these grants. I had a couple questions. First, I'd like to make a comment about Supervisor Rickman's concern about pollution coming from outside of the area. And I believe that the statement was that we have the strictest standards in the nation. But I want to remind you that you are not meeting those standards. And so while we have standards set, we're still working to meet regulation from many years ago. And I think it's very important to acknowledge that we create our own pollution here in the Central Valley that we should be most concerned about. One example is the Southern California's Air District has implemented an ISR rule that is much more protective than the one that we have here. And those are the kinds of things that we should be wasting our time on, not trying to figure out what kind of pollution comes from the Bay Area. But along with the presentation that was made, I had a couple of questions. How do you ensure that small farmers BIPOC farmers are the ones accessing some of these grants. How do farmers find out about these resources, and who are the organizations that you collaborate with? Are there any challenges that that farmers are sharing about some of these grant opportunities? And I know that Mr. Chiesa has already shared a couple of those, as he is a farmer himself and has shared some of the challenges with the mulching program. It is not enough money. But I'd like to see if, will you be presenting or having some additional information about how these funds actually get to the farmers and their concerns? I'd also like to get some information about these grants that are available for farmers to reduce their pollution. We know that, you know, electrifying their equipment is one option, but here we also see a lot of dust pollution during harvesting time. We'd like to learn how we can help, as an organization, can help small farmers access these resources, but we want to better understand some of those challenges. So yeah, how can I learn more about these things?
Thank you, Bianca. Go ahead, Samir.
Yeah, thank you, Bianca, for your comments and questions. I absolutely will have our team, and I don't have a name for you right now, but you will hear from somebody on efforts that we conduct to provide these programs in an accessible manner to the smaller farmers. It's absolutely a priority of ours in the board. And we've done a number of things to make that happen, and continue to evaluate even more ways of making that happen. So also appreciate the offer to work with us to try to keep increasing the outreach and do whatever is possible to address community concerns and make these programs accessible to smaller farmers. There's a number of different things that happen across these different programs that the board has put into place. And we're happy to share that with you, and obviously happy to also engage and see what ideas you might have and what sort of support, you know, we collectively we may be able to provide on that front. Appreciate the comments.
Yeah, thank you.
The next commenter is Janet Dietz-Kamay.
Welcome back, Janet.
Thank you. Bianca addressed questions and comments that I had regarding this subject. So I would like to endorse, support, and restate her comments. Please acknowledge what she has said. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet.
I see no further comments on this item.
This is not an action item, but I want to reiterate what Member Mendez had said, the tremendous work and effort that happens internally. And I know it has a lot to do with staff. You're a 30+ year employee. I know you started here with the district, Tom, and you've forgotten more in the last week than I'll ever know about these funding programs and how to make it work. But going back just quickly to the farmer program, when they zeroed it out this year, the strategy was just to get some money in there. So the program is still top of mind and whatever it was. And that was a last minute deal. And those are the types of things that I don't think people understand. The work that goes in at the end of session, the continual calls to people, reaching out. So again, on behalf of the board, I want to thank you for your efforts. And I know you have someone in training as you maybe think about the end of your career, but you've been invaluable to this organization. That $3 or $6.5 billion, half of that approximately is money that we received in this district, which is pretty amazing. $3.5 billion, more than $3 billion. So that's it. All right. Seeing no other comments, we will move on to the next item, which is item 9, agenda for the November 24 Governing Board Study Session, educational and strategic planning purposes. For
Chair, Board members, good morning. I'll be presenting this item. I don't have any slides, but we'll kind of refer you to the agenda item itself. And just real quick, wanted to recap for the purpose of the public and the board, what the purpose of these meetings are. The tradition of the board has been to hold these longer board meetings that are called study sessions to really allow the board members and the public to engage in a more casual setting and discuss in a bit of a longer way as well items of strategic interest to the district. And they've been very successful. We've addressed a variety of issues over the years. There's some continuity on some of those issues, and you'll see that on the list of potential agenda items for the meeting. It's going to be held this year in downtown Visalia. And we have Councilmember Nguyen from City of Visalia and Supervisor Shuklian, both sort of in that area. We're excited about the meeting. It's a beautiful venue and a beautiful setting there, downtown Visalia at the Convention Center. It's set for starting at 11 a.m. on November 13th and then finishing by 5 p.m. on November 14th, just to remind you on the calendar for that, or the schedule for that. We're also planning to add another interesting element to the meeting, what we're calling a clean air equipment showcase there. There's space there near the meeting at the Convention Center to actually outdoors at the plaza to bring in a variety of equipment, a lot of which has been funded or supported in some way by the board, and really just get the public engaged on seeing some of the efforts that have been going on to try to reduce air pollution. The purpose of this item is to talk about potential agenda topics. I have a list here of items that will, I think, help the conversation and just assist us all in preparing, for the upcoming meeting. There's no vote today on the agenda. This is really just getting feedback and direction from the board, and then even up to the legal sort of timeframe for posting the agenda, there could be other items that for whatever reason may need to be on the agenda. So, but it is a great opportunity here with this discussion to talk about these potential items and see if there's further direction from the board before we land the agenda. So I'm just going to go through them really quickly in terms of what the items are and kind of the purpose of the item, and then we'll open it up for discussion and see if there's any other ideas from the board and the public. So the first one on the list here is an update on wildfire prevention and response strategy. And I don't want to get ahead of myself here a little bit, but there may be a certificate here kind of related to the wildfire efforts that go on here in the region. This has been a kind of a standing item, if you will, on this agenda, just because of how significant this issue is to the region, but also how much evolution is actually going on at the local, state, and federal level in terms of management of the forest and just different things that are happening in that space. So once again, we want to provide an update to the board and the public on these different pieces of wildfire impacts. We already have a couple of really great outside participants that are tentatively, at least for now, planning on being at the meeting. Leadership from federal and state level on a couple of different facets of this. So we're excited to see that as well. The next item on the list is the talking about the fireworks, the alternatives to fireworks pilot incentive program that the board approved at last year's study session that we implemented. I think you've all in some way seen the results of that, or maybe even involved in trying to promote the program. So we want to do a debrief on that and see where we want to go from here, based on the results of that program. We also want to have another discussion. This is another item that the board has been very engaged on, which is talking about our community engagement efforts and what do we do to get our communities involved in the air quality efforts. What are some of the most recent successes that we've seen, maybe challenges and opportunities, and just kind of brainstorming, where we want to go to continue enhancing our level of community engagement here in the Valley. The next item on the agenda is one that kind of builds on last year's discussion around climate initiatives and hydrogen production and usage of hydrogen, in zero emission equipment and vehicles. We've been talking to the folks at Arches at the state level who just, like I mentioned earlier, received the $1.2 billion award. and really trying to understand, how that project, which is really a set of projects, is going to be implemented in our region throughout the state, and how our region will, in some way, hopefully benefit from those efforts. So that there's actually going to be representatives there that will share with the board and the public where that is, and talk about those opportunities. The next item on the agenda has come up. It comes up really often, and we are in the final year of the multi-year phase out of agricultural open burning. So it's a critical time, again, to be having a conversation about where this effort is, and also, what are some of the, things we need to be thinking about going, kind of with this final deadline coming up at the end of the year, and looking for resources and whatever outreach and other support is needed to be successful with the phase out in the coming years. And the next item, which is item 6 on the list here, is an item related to the public facing air quality tools that are now, many of which are now available to the public. We have our own app, for example. There's a number of different apps and other information out there. This is a conversation that I think is a very timely conversation, because we are at a point now where we're not the only game in town. When we developed this app, the RAN app, and developed sort of the peripheral pieces of that, we were really the only ones that were doing it at the time. And since that time, there's been a lot of other information that's come out. It can be confusing if you're a resident trying to understand, which app to use and, what the information means. So definitely want to have a conversation with the board about where do we go from here in the spirit of continuous improvement, and make sure that we're as responsive as possible to the public with those different tools. Then we want to have an update on different information systems technologies, basically meaning, what sort of technology things are happening at the Air District, that are improving efficiency, customer service, for a variety of different things that are going on. There's a very important item on the list here, kind of the last of, there are a couple of other items here, but the last of sort of the programmatic discussions, which is talking about our work culture. And also, that's related to our mission, vision, our core values. But, this is something that we take very seriously, discussing, where we are with that culture, what are the opportunities for improving it. It's constantly evolving, and the board has been really supportive and just very involved in keeping an eye on that with us here at the staff level, and want to definitely share, where we are with that. And then there's a couple of items on the agenda to round it out. Traditionally, we've had leadership from CARB and EPA at the meetings to share, what's going on with them, for the board to be able to share your questions, priorities, and really just have that level of engagement with our partners at the state and federal level. And then lastly, the Employees Association has an opportunity to also have an item where they can provide any updates and share with the board as well. So those are some of the items that, we were thinking about. I just wanted to note that, just like today's discussion around funding priorities and innovation led to the, kind of even more improvement to our legislative and policy platform that comes in January. These conversations, many of also help continue developing that. There are many opportunities throughout the year. This is not meant to be all encompassing of every major issue or opportunity, because I think there's a balance with these meetings where it's a 1.5 day sort of meeting. You want to have enough items to cover some territory, but not so many items that there isn't enough time to engage with the public to actually have full conversations on the items. So that's always been a little bit of a challenge. It's the time crunch of, especially when you have outside folks coming in, you want to have enough time to really just talk about the issues, not too many items on the list. Just a little bit of, I'll throw that out there as we talk about items. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you and the board for any ideas, any conversations, start the conversation with the board on this, and then of course, take it to public comment when, at the right time.
Okay, Dr. Pacheco-Warner.
Thank you. So I think in particular, some of the earlier items in the proposed agenda, like the fireworks and the wildfire and the ag burn, it might be helpful to weave in where we're at in attainment and sort of forward looking on the attainment issues, just for the continual education of the board in terms of where we're at on those. And I don't think it needs to be a separate presentation other than just background for some of those. And then I know that we also always have like leadership come from CARB and EPA. And I just thinking through the comments that have happened over the year and public comments and from board, I wonder if there's not also an opportunity, whoever comes, even if it's not in presentation form, to bring some material, some educational things for the board around all of the different truck regulations and, you know, where things are at on that, just so that we understand and further education of us on those regs, both on the carb side and then what is happening at the federal level, because there's been some movement this year on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other board members want to have additional thoughts? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go out to the public.
Thank you. Are there any public comments in Modesto?
Through the board, we have one public comment from Modesto. We have Maren Pitt with MCCV.
Manufacturers Council.
Go ahead.
Welcome, Maren.
We're not hearing the comment here in Fresno, so I'm not sure if it's a microphone issue or apologies, Marin. I can see that you're trying to comment. Give us 1 second here to give you a solution. Sorry.
Oh, there we go. Yes, good morning, Chairman Keza, members of the board. First of all, I just want to thank the board for going through these exercises and study sessions to gain more information and knowledge. And it's really appreciated by those of us who are affected by some of the rulemaking and policy making of the board, and having a chance to listen and learn with the board as we go along is much appreciated. In terms of a particular suggestion, I think it might be important to kind of do maybe perhaps a feedback loop on some of the implementation of the rules, and specifically around both around the forklift rules and as well as the advanced clean fleet. And I know you're going to see some equipment, but what we're seeing with many of our members is the scaling up and the actual manufacturing of some of these alternative fuel, whether it's electric or hydrogen forklifts, is just such a challenge when they look at the numbers of forklifts that need to be replaced, and some operational challenges. And so I know we spent some time last year talking about that when they did the study session in Modesto, but I think it's important not only to do rulemaking, but also to have a feedback loop to understand what the ramifications, both good and bad, are relative to implementation. That concludes my comment.
Thank you very much for your comments, Maren.
Thank you. Modesto, do you have any further comments?
No further comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Bakersfield that would like to comment?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none.
Online. Okay. So this again is not an action item. I think we have a pretty good direction with some comment from Maren, how we might be. And I encourage all the board members to, if you can make it, I think, you know, it's really that opportunity to do deep dives, and that's where you learn the most really at these study sessions. So appreciate it. So now I'm going to, we had a little technical issue during public comment. And so I'm going to go back and open public comment. If you give me the grace, we had one person that wanted to speak, and again, it was our issue. So
Through the chair, his name is Gregory Barbarian.
Irrigation District.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Hello. Yeah,
I can hear you. Great.
Beautiful. So I started this process at 10 minutes to 9. But I'm finally on, and it's quite interesting listening to the back and forth discussions about things that are impacting the small farmers, and that's what I'm calling about. Good morning, board. Thanks for taking this opportunity and circling back to the beginning of the agenda. I want to make a public comment. I'm a small farmer. My name's Greg Barbarian. I farm at West Lawn in Dakota. I do want to tell you that as a small farmer, the Air Board has been very supportive of providing programs and information on how to upgrade equipment and how to participate in a lot of the funding activities. Your website is extremely detailed and has a wealth of information. So having said that, I want to talk to you about the issue that I want to deal with, and that's with raisin tray burning. You guys have been phasing that out over the last couple of years. And last year you offered a program where you promoted people that had the individual raisin trays, not the continuous trays, but the individual raisin trays. You offered a rebate, and to, at least what I did was chop them up and left them in the vineyard. This year, I guess there's no money for that program, but maybe there is, but last week there wasn't. But it's not working for me as an organic farmer, even if there was money for that program, because it's very difficult to chop these trays up with the mower in the vineyard, and you have to make 2 or 3 passes because the vineyard is terraced, meaning it's not level, the ground's not level, and so when the mower goes over the trays, if they're at the lower end of the row and not the higher end, the mower doesn't get it, so you have to make sometimes 2 or 3 passes to chop them up. So my question is, and then that's not counting other issues, but my question is there any availability for people to burn paper trays this year? Because I heard there is not going to be, because it's been phased out. So that's my question right now.
Mr. Chair and board members, and apologies, Greg, for the technical hiccups there. Thanks for being patient. I just you're correct that the raisin tray burning has been phased out. So there is not an opportunity for burning of the raisin trays. There is an opportunity to continue the conversation with you about your sort of situation, and also, if there's any way that we can find some either solution or resources to try to help you with the situation. So happy to circle back with you to talk to you some more about, I think the grant program that you're referring to, I believe has expired, but that's not to say that we can't take a close look at that again with you and see what we can do to try to help with the situation. But yeah, there is no burning authorized at this point for raisin trays.
Okay, so here's the problem. The problem is that some of these trays that you buy are poly-coated for rain. Okay, so this is not a continuous tray. These are individual trays. It's a little bit different than a continuous tray. Those usually are not wet strength poly-coated paper, but the trays that you buy that are like 30 by 30 are usually poly-coated. When you chop those up and incorporate those into the soil, it leaves that residue from that poly coating, which is plastic, in the soil. So it's going to be causing another impact, because I don't know if that's going to get, incorporated in the soil, or it's just going to sit there for 1,000 years. I don't know. I do know this. If you properly burn your trays, and we're not talking about huge numbers of farmers that still farm this way. Most of it is on a continuous tray. Some of it doesn't even hit a tray. So it's a very minimal deal. If you look at the amount of farmers, and if they burn their trays correctly, it makes very minimal smoke, very minimal. Now, I don't know if you're looking for smoke. I don't know what exactly the reason why they banned burning these trays, but a few years back, when you started this process, you didn't give anybody any burn permits when they were available during the fall. And in the fall, right now, the trays are dry. They're not wet. They're dry. You guys waited until March to give out permits. Those bundles that I had in my field for 4 or 5 months, they were literally soaking wet like newspaper. They took triple, quadruple the amount of time to burn because they were wet, and they smoked, and they smoldered, and I had to open up the bundles to get them to burn. And I called you guys and told you this. It did not make sense to wait till the spring after these bundles got wet to do a burn on them. It didn't make sense. But
All right, Greg,
for
I'm
some
sorry.
reason- yeah.
I'm gonna let Samir answer because we're way over the time. Samir,
How much? Excuse me. How much time do I get?
you had
How much
3
time do I
minutes
get?
and we gave you an
Okay,
extra minute. So go ahead, Samir. Go ahead. Thank you, Greg.
One moment, Samir. I want to be sarcastic and say I've been waiting since 10 minutes to 9.
I know. And I apologize.
literally-
That's my fault
So I
completely. So
appreciate the extra time. I appreciate.
don't blame Samir. Please blame me because it's completely my fault. Samir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I absolutely hear you loud and clear, Greg, on your issues. We will circle back with you to see what we could do. Just wanted to note, we're not prescriptive on how you deal with your materials. We don't ask farmers to necessarily work it back into the ground. There's disposal of those materials that may be an option. That's what I understand some folks at least did the last couple of years. So we're happy to circle back and see what we could do to assist Greg with his situation.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Did anyone else have technical issues? Yeah.
Bianca Lopez has her hand raised. I'm not sure.
Bianca, did you have because the public comment period is closed. If you were on, if you had a technical issue, let me know.
Well, yeah, I raised my hand and it was brought down twice.
Oh, during public comment?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll make it brief if possible, but I wanted to get some clarification on all the hydrogen talk that Mr. Samir just shared. There was an example, there was a comment made about how hydrogen company of some sort or somebody will be addressing the air district about hydrogen. If I can get some clarification on that, and then I do have some other things to say.
Do you want to go through your issues and then we'll answer them? If you can keep going, we got that issue.
Sounds good.
Keep going.
Yeah, thank you. So then I just wanted to maybe give an example about why the RAN program isn't ideal. I live in Riverbank. The district only has 2 air monitors in the county. There's one in downtown Modesto and one in downtown Turlock. I get notices from the RAN program that says it's level 3. But if I look at the website at other sites, specifically SJV Air and Purple Air monitors, my air quality is fine. Something is going on in the Modesto monitors. So Riverbank people are getting notifications about the air quality in Modesto, not in Riverbank. And so it is very important for the air district to install more air monitors across the county and across the region. And I know that the ABA 617 communities are also tasked with implementing some more monitors, but I think the RAN program needs to either shut down or incorporate these other air monitors to their notification system, or maybe just acknowledge that the RAN program is faulty and start promoting the other alert systems. I am really concerned. In addition to that, I want to say that environmental justice communities do not want hydrogen. Hydrogen is a false solution, and it only will continue to be polluting in the disadvantaged communities. So unless you actually also implement a rule that says that you will not be bringing any more pollution to these disadvantaged communities, disadvantaged communities will not be in favor of hydrogen. Bioindustry is another false solution. Instead of considering or looking at how we can continue to produce materials out of ag waste, we need to talk about reducing the ag waste. And then also composting. That is how we sequester the carbon back into the land, instead of giving industry another opportunity and another route to greenwash their practices. Environmental justice communities do not want hydrogen in their communities. But I'd like to know more about all this hydrogen talk that Samir was explaining, when are they coming? Who is this hydrogen company that you are in discussion with? I believe there was a company that was named, or maybe a project or a program, Arches project. I'd just like some more details on all this hydrogen promotion.
Thank you, Bianca. Go
Through
ahead.
the chair. Yeah, thanks, Bianca, for your questions. And I'll just give a quick response and then circle back as necessary. And I think it'll hopefully give you the information that you need. So on the hydrogen effort, by the way, thank you for supporting, I think embedded in your comments, the conversation around these items, because it sounds like you're interested in both. So I appreciate your support for what we're proposing on the agenda. On the hydrogen piece, the Arches project, it's an acronym for a long name that I don't have in front of me, I don't think right now, but it's a state proposal that was funded by the Department of Energy under the bipartisan infrastructure law. And it's a $1.2 billion award. The information is available publicly. You can search for it and see they have their website and other information available. The purpose of the item is to have them actually report to the board and the public as to what that project entails and have that conversation. I think a lot of the questions that you have are the types of questions that would be good to ask during that conversation. So that's the project. It's a publicly available project, and it's a state project, and we're asking them to come to talk to here locally about what they're doing. In the RAN discussion, just wanted to again reiterate that's the purpose of the conversation, is to kind of talk about that tool and how it relates to other tools and see where we go from here. And I definitely think that there's pros and cons, on different apps. And so I think it'll be a good conversation to see, kind of like you noted, how there are other tools and kind of what the future of the app is. So thank you for supporting both of those discussions.
Thank you very much. All right. No one else on there? Okay. All right. Again, that was an educational item or non-action item. We're going to move on to item 10, appoint the ad hoc governing board subcommittee to nominate candidates for the 2025 governing board chair and vice chair. So I had Samir, I had asked him to send me who was on last year, because I like to do the voluntold more than volunteer. I'll ask, but it kind of looked at last year. Last year, members on the subcommittee were Member Couch, Vice Chair Lewis, Member Pereira, Reina, Mendez, Pacheco, Warner. And it's supposed to be 2 from each region, 3 supervisors, 2 council members, and 1 governor appointee. Suggested members this year, as I went through, I would ask Member Nguyen if she'd be willing to serve. Member Shucklian is not here, so she's definitely on. Member Sheriff. Yeah, did it last year. Member Preciado, if you'd be willing. Myself, Member Rickman. Is Member Rickman, do I see a thumbs up?
I think I served on it. I served on it the last 3 years.
No, you did not serve on it last year. I am sure of that.
Just checking.
Yeah, you're probably confusing the budget committee with the nominating committee. So that would be it. If it's okay, Nguyen, Shucklian, Sheriffs, Preciado, myself, Rickman. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's it. I got it. So if everyone's okay, that's where we're headed. All right. See how easy that was? On to item 11. Why do you think I'm on the committee now? To ensure.
Get the hell.
A verbal report from the California Air Resources Board, Dr. Pacheco Warner.
Thank you so much, Chair. And I want to just kind of say for Samir, it's the Alliance for Renewable Clean Hydrogen Energy Systems. And definitely initiative led by the governor's office. So that's an important thing to note there. So for me, I wanted to update you that next month we will be voting on just minor amendments to the Carl Moyer program. but really wanted to emphasize that and commend the Air District for their heavy involvement in shaping that program, including the amendments that will come to the CAR board next month. So really excited about that. And then continuing to engage with stakeholders as needed on the low carbon fuel standard, as that will come to a vote in November. So thank you so much. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Pacheco-Warner? Okay, on to item 12.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. Just a quick couple of items here. Wanted to, I almost let the cat out of the bag earlier, but we did receive a National Best Practice in Air Quality Management Award from the Association of Air Pollution Control Agencies for for their administration of air quality programs, a local government comprehensive wildfire prevention and smoke impact response program. So we have a comprehensive effort that we've grown over the years it's a multifaceted effort, everything from working with our land management agencies to working with community organizations when there are wildfire impacts, deploy air monitors, to deploy air purifiers and other education outreach. It's proactive, it's responsive when fires happen, it's proactive in terms of fuel reduction and other efforts. And just really proud to, on behalf of the board, accept this award recently. And Jess Olson actually formally accepted it on all of our behalf and spoke to this nationally to other agencies so they can learn hopefully from different pieces of what we're doing here. And of course, it's constantly evolving. And in November, we'll be having a good discussion to make it even better into the future. So just wanted to note that, and we'll be hanging this up somewhere so people can see that. Just the latest, by the way, of several awards recently for different efforts here. I'd mentioned that the trip to DC. Again, I want to thank the council members, Councilmember Escudia Brayton and Mayor Preciado for their hard work during that trip. And Chair Chiesa was definitely supportive there leading up to it and behind the scenes. Just want to thank all the elected officials for that. Wanted to also remind the board and the public that there will not be an October board meeting. So just it's officially posted and is out there. Just make sure if you have that recurring calendar item on your agenda, that just make sure we're all aware of that. And then just continuing to work to make sure that the Clean Air Centers program, there is some funding left. It's dwindling, but certainly if there's anybody interested still in having a community center, library, other facility, have one of these commercial level air purifiers, please give me a ring and we're happy to connect you to those resources to keep kind of wrapping that program up. But it's quite a bit of those now distributed throughout the valley. So with that, Mr. Chair, board members, happy to take any questions if you have any.
Any comments, Samir? Seeing none. Last item, governing board member comments. If someone will push the button. Member Lewis, Vice Chair Lewis.
Thank
Please.
you. Well, I just have two comments, and one is in regards. I have two comments, and one is in regards to the air monitoring that we do in our valley. And this was in the month of August, in the western part of the valley, in the Los Banos area, Dos Palos area, we had bad air. And I checked the air quality in Fresno, and it was much better. So I'm still going to advocate and push to have consideration and budget for possibly putting an air monitoring system at 152 and I-5, because that's an area that I believe that pollution is coming from the Bay Area. There's a lot more car traveling, a lot more people commuting over 152 back into Los Banos. Some people coming even to Fresno who work in the Bay Area. And I think the closest monitor on Interstate 5 is at Manteca. So there's a space of area there that is not being monitored on Interstate 5. So I'd like our staff to consider, is there a way that we can get a monitoring system in there for the air? And I may be jumping the gun a little bit, but I'm going to throw a carrot out here for the workshop for 2025. I'd like to offer the Hotel Dior. It's self-contained. It's a beautiful ground. I mean, it's not going to be in a fancy city or anything, but it's a wonderfully remodeled hotel, beautiful furniture, excellent catering. I had my birthday there this past year, and the food is absolutely excellent. They also grow their own herbs on site, so that would be a nice thing for our staff to see. And I just think it'd be a nice location. So I'm just throwing that out there for the year 2025. And I have an issue with going up in the mountains, so we don't have to go up in the mountains on that one. And that is my report for today. Thank you.
Thank you. And you forgot to say there's an In-N-Out burger next door.
There's an In-N-Out burger there.
That's rich fries in the world. Member Preciado.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would like to comment on the trip we did to DC. I believe it was very productive. And I noticed that everywhere we showed up, they were taking notes. Department of Transportation, Department of Energy, when we talked with our Congress people and our senators, they were really paying attention about the needs in the Central Valley, how different it is from the coast area or the south area, San Diego, LA, in the Central Valley, the struggles and needs that we have because of our agricultural valley and the challenges that we face. But I did notice that Department of Energy, they do have seem to have their budgets in the $1 billion. I believe they mentioned $60 billion or $57 billion, but and it goes in conjunction with a lot of the stuff we need here about making sure that they're producing electricity in a different ways that with less pollution. So I think the efforts that department is doing, working with the states and counties and communities is very important to keep moving, reducing pollution in our valley. I would like to also commend staff. It was very organized. Monday was strictly for the pollution board. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, we were very, very hard with the whole 8 counties, meeting with the delegations and with elected officials. Actually, I believe it was very productive, and I think we'll see the gains from that visit in the near future with those grants that hopefully we will receive at the different counties and cities. And just one recommendation, I would like to see maybe at the study session that we can have experts talking about biomass solutions and also methane gas, because I think, we do have a landfill that is actually burning the methane gas, but I know there is ways to make the methane gas into energy or some other projects, but I know that some locations do not produce enough. It's not cost effective, but I think we should kind of start looking into pilot programs to see how we can reduce that pollution too. Thank you.
Your comments, Dr. Pacheco Warner.
Yeah, quickly, just wanted to thank all the staff that helped host CARB last, oh God, I don't even know when now, last month. Yeah, seems like 2 years ago. Yeah, so thank you so much. Apologies, I couldn't be here in person, but thank you so much for hosting. And then Supervisor Strickland is not here, but thank you to Tulare County for hosting CARB yesterday in their CARB truck stop, which had over 200 people there learning about the truck rules and being very engaged. I got a chance to go myself. So I am also pushing for more of those to come on the calendar next year in the Valley, to have more opportunities for some North Valley and maybe Central Valley to have that opportunity to learn about all those regs as well. Thank you.
very much. Any other comments? All right, seeing no other comments, I'm going to adjourn this meeting at